Asterisk, the most painful words don't always come from strangers. Sometimes they come from the people who should love you the most. But what happens when the daughter they called worthless becomes their only hope? Stay with me, because this story will change how you see family forever. Asterisk, asterisk, my name is Khadijah, and I'm 72 years old. Today I want to share with you a story that took me decades to find the courage to tell. It's about how the family that once told me I was nothing eventually came to realize I was their everything. But the journey to that realization was paved with tears, sacrifice, and a strength I never knew I possessed. Asterisk, I was born in 1952, the fourth daughter in a family that desperately wanted sons. When my mother, Sakina, held me for the first time, I was told later that she wept not tears of joy, but tears of disappointment. My father, Ghulam Muhammad, barely looked at me for the first month of my life. In those days, daughters were seen as burdens, and I was just another mouth to feed in a household that already struggled to make ends meet. Asterisk, my three older sisters, Fatima, Zainab, and Ruxana, had already established the family pattern. They were quiet, obedient, and lived in the shadow of our parents' expectations for the sons who never came. When I entered the world, that shadow grew even darker. Asterisk, another useless girl. I remember my paternal grandmother, Ammi Jan, saying when she first saw me, those words would echo through my childhood, shaping how everyone in our extended family saw me. I wasn't just the fourth daughter. I was the final confirmation that our family line was cursed with girls. Asterisk, growing up in our small house in the old part of the city, I learned early that my presence was merely tolerated. While my sisters accepted their fate quietly, something inside me burned differently. I asked questions. I dreamed of reading books. I wanted to learn about the world beyond our narrow street. This curiosity, which should have been nurtured, was instead seen as defiance. Asterisk, why can't Khadijah be more like Fatima? My mother would sigh. Fatima, my eldest sister, was the perfect daughter, silent, helpful, never questioning anything. She married at 16 to a man our father chose, moved to her husband's village, and we rarely heard from her except for occasional letters filled with news of her own struggles. Asterisk, when I turned 8, something happened that changed my life forever. Our neighbor, Ustani Rashida, was a widow who ran a small school for girls in her home. She had noticed me watching through her window as she taught the alphabet to young girls. One day, she approached my mother. Asterisk, let me teach Khadijah to read. She offered. She has bright eyes. It would be a waste not to educate her. Asterisk, my father's response was swift and harsh. Education makes girls rebellious. She'll learn what she needs to know at home. Asterisk, but Ustani Rashida was persistent. She offered to teach me for free in the evenings, so it wouldn't interfere with my household duties. After weeks of persuasion, my parents reluctantly agreed, perhaps thinking it would keep me occupied and out of their way. Asterisk, those evening lessons became my sanctuary. Under the flickering light of a kerosene lamp, I learned to read Urdu, then basic arithmetic, and eventually some English. Ustani Rashida saw in me what my family refused to see, potential. Asterisk, knowledge is your key to freedom. Beta, she would tell me. No one can take away what you learn. Asterisk. But my growing literacy only widened the gap between me and my family. When I would read newspaper headlines aloud or help neighbors write letters, my parents saw it as showing off. My sisters grew jealous of the attention, even though it was mostly negative attention. Asterisk, she thinks she's better than us. Zainab would complain to our mother. Why does she need to read when she'd just get married and have children like the rest of us? Asterisk, asterisk, if you're relating to this struggle of being different in your family, you're not alone. Please consider joining our community by hitting the subscribe button. Your support means everything to stories like these. Asterisk, asterisk, when I turned 15, my parents decided it was time for me to follow my sister's path. They had found a suitable husband, widower named Abdul Majid, who was 20 years older and lived in a distant village. He had 3 children from his first marriage and needed someone to take care of them. Asterisk, you should be grateful. My father told me when he announced the engagement. At your age, with your reputation for being difficult, we're lucky anyone wants you. For the first time in my life, I said no. The word came out of my mouth before I could stop it. But once it was spoken, I felt a strange sense of power. My parents stared at me in shock. In our culture, in our time, daughters didn't say no to their parents' choices. Asterisk, what did you say? My father asked, his voice dangerously quiet. Asterisk, I said no, Abu. I don't want to get married yet. I want to continue learning. Asterisk, the slap came so fast I didn't see it coming. The pain in my cheek was nothing compared to the pain in my heart, as I saw the hatred in my father's eyes. Asterisk, you ungrateful girl. We fed you, clothed you, tolerated your nonsense for 15 years, and this is how you repay us. You think you're too good for marriage? You think your education makes you special? Asterisk, my mother joined in. We should have married you off years ago. Now look what happens when you give a girl too much freedom. She forgets her place. For 3 days, I was locked in our small storage room with only bread and water. They thought hunger and isolation would break my spirit. Instead, it strengthened my resolve. I realized that if I stayed, I would become another Fatima, silent, broken woman whose dreams had been sacrificed on the altar of family expectations. Asterisk, on the 4th night, I made a decision that would change everything. Asterisk, Ustani Rashida had always told me about her niece, Yasmin, who lived in Karachi and worked as a teacher. She had offered to help me if I ever needed it. With nothing but the clothes on my back and the few rupees I had saved from small jobs, I left my home before dawn. Asterisk, I still remember walking through those empty streets, my heart pounding with fear and excitement. I was terrified of what lay ahead. But I was more terrified of what lay behind a life of silent submission and unfulfilled dreams. Asterisk, the journey to Karachi was the longest 8 hours of my life. With every mile the bus traveled, I moved further away from everything I had ever known. When I finally reached Yasmin's small apartment, I was exhausted, scared, completely alone. Asterisk, Yasmin was everything Ustani Rashida had said she would be: kind, understanding, and strong. She listened to my story without judgment and offered me a place to stay while I figured out my next steps. Asterisk, education is your weapon, she told me, echoing her aunt's words. But first, you need to survive. Asterisk, she helped me get a job as a house cleaner for wealthy families in the city. The work was hard, but I was used to hard work. What I wasn't used to was earning my own money and making my own decisions. For the first time in my life, I felt the intoxicating taste of freedom. Asterisk, while working during the day, I continued my education at night. Yasmin helped me enroll in evening classes for adult education. It took me 3 years to complete what most children finish in school, but I was determined. The families I worked for began to notice my dedication to learning. Mrs. Cameron, whose house I cleaned twice a week, was particularly supportive. She started giving me her old books and even helped me improve my English. Asterisk, you remind me of myself, she told me one day. I also had to fight for my education. Don't let anyone tell you it's too late to dream. Asterisk, by the age of 20, I had not only completed my basic education, but had also learned enough English to get a job as a clerk in a small office. It wasn't much, but it was progress. I moved into my own tiny room and began saving money. Asterisk, during all this time, I had no contact with my family. I had heard through mutual acquaintances that they had told everyone I had died. It was easier for them to be mourning parents than parents of a disobedient daughter. Asterisk, the pain of their rejection never fully healed. But I learned to carry it differently. Instead of letting it break me, I used it as fuel for my determination. Asterisk, at 23. I met Rahim, a teacher who worked at a school near my office. He was different from the men I had grown up around. He believed in women's education and respected my independence. When he proposed marriage, it was the first time someone had asked for my opinion about my own life. Asterisk, I don't want a traditional wife, he told me honestly. I want a partner, someone who can think and dream alongside me. Asterisk, our wedding was small jest. Yasmin, a few friends, and Rahim's supportive family. As I sat dressed in a simple yellow dupatta that Yasmin had bought for me, I thought about the grand wedding my parents would have arranged for me with Abdul Majid. I felt no regret. Asterisk, Rahim and I built a beautiful life together. We were blessed with 2 children, a daughter we named Sarah, and a son we named Tariq. I was determined that my children would grow up knowing they were valued for who they were. It's not their gender. Asterisk, I continued working even after marriage, eventually becoming a supervisor at my office. Rahim supported my career, sharing household duties and childcare responsibilities. We weren't wealthy, but we were happy. Asterisk, stories like these remind us why it's so important to support women's choices. If you believe in the power of women's independence, please show your support by subscribing to our channel. Asterisk, for 25 years, I had no contact with my family. I often wondered about my sisters, my parents, whether they were well. Sometimes I would dream about my mother calling my name, and I would wake up with tears on my cheeks. Asterisk, Yasmin would occasionally get news from her aunt about my family. Fatima had lost her husband and was struggling to raise 4 children alone. Zainab had married but remained childless, which made her bitter and angry. Ruxana had a son but lived with an abusive husband who controlled every aspect of her life. Asterisk. My parents had grown old and frail. My father had developed diabetes and heart problems. My mother suffered from arthritis that left her barely able to walk. They lived alone in the same house where I had grown up, with only occasional visits from their daughters who had their own struggles. Asterisk, they ask about you sometimes. Ustani Rashida told Yasmin during one of her visits. Your mother especially. She keeps your old dupatta in her trunk. Asterisk, the news stirred something deep inside me, but I wasn't ready to reach out. The wounds were still too fresh, the hurt still too real. Asterisk, in 2010. When I was 58 years old, I received a phone call that would change everything. It was from my neighbor's son, someone I barely remembered from my childhood. Asterisk, Kala Khadija. He said, using the respectful term for aunt, I got your number from Ustani Rashida. I'm calling about your family. Asterisk, my heart stopped. What about them? Asterisk, your father had a massive heart attack yesterday. He's in the hospital. Your mother's not well either. Your sisters are there, but ... double quotes. He paused. They don't have money for his treatment. The doctors are asking for a lot of money for the surgery he needs. Asterisk, I sat in silence processing this information. The man who had rejected me, who had called me worthless, who had disowned me, he was dying and needed help. Asterisk, Kala. The young man continued. Your mother keeps asking for you. She says she wants to see you before it's too late. Asterisk, that night, I didn't sleep. I walked around my house looking at the life I had built, the photos of my children's graduations, the certificates of my achievements, the comfortable furniture Rahim and I had bought together. I had everything I had dreamed of as a young girl, everything my family had told me I would never achieve. Asterisk, but I also had something else. The wisdom that comes with age and the understanding that forgiveness isn't about the other person. It's about freeing yourself from the poison of resentment. Asterisk, the next morning, I told Rahim about the call. He listened quietly, then took my hand. Asterisk, what do you want to do? He asked. I think I need to go see them, I said, surprised by my own words. Then we'll go together. Asterisk, the drive back to my childhood neighborhood felt like traveling back in time. The streets were the same, though more crowded. The house looked smaller and shabbier than I remembered. Paint was peeling from the walls, and the small garden my mother had once tended was overgrown with weeds. Asterisk, when I knocked on the door, it was Ruxana who answered. For a moment, she stared at me as if seeing a ghost. Then she began to cry. Asterisk, Khadija. Is it really you? Asterisk, my mother appeared behind her, leaning heavily on a walking stick. She had aged so much that I almost didn't recognize her. Her hair was completely white, her face lined with wrinkles. Her body bent with years of hard work and sorrow. Asterisk, Khadija, she whispered, reaching out her hand to touch my face. You came back. Asterisk, in that moment, all the anger I had carried for decades began to dissolve. This wasn't the strong, harsh woman who had locked me in a room and called me worthless. This was an old, frightened woman who was watching her husband die and facing her own mortality. Asterisk, I came as soon as I heard about Abu. I said softly. Asterisk, at the hospital. I saw my father for the first time in 25 years. He looked so small, in that hospital bed surrounded by machines and tubes. When he saw me, his eyes filled with tears. Asterisk, Khadija, he whispered. I thought I would die without seeing you again. Asterisk, I'm here now, Abu, I said, taking his frail hand in mine. Asterisk, the doctors explained that he needed immediate surgery that would cost more than 200,000 rupees. My sisters had managed to gather only 30,000 between them. They looked at me with a mixture of hope and shame. Asterisk, without hesitation, I arranged for the payment. It represented months of savings. Money Rahim and I had set aside for our daughter's wedding. But it felt like the right thing to do. Asterisk, my father survived the surgery, but he was weak and needed months of care and medication. My mother's arthritis had worsened to the point where she could barely take care of herself. Let alone him. Asterisk. My sisters were trapped in their own difficult circumstances. Fatima was working as a seamstress to support her children. Zainab was dealing with her own health issues. Ruxana's husband controlled their finances so tightly that she had no money to contribute to our parents' care. Asterisk. It became clear that I was their only hope. Asterisk, for the next few months. I traveled back and forth between Karachi and my hometown, managing my parents' care, arranging for their medications, and ensuring they had proper food and medical attention. Rahim supported my decision completely, often accompanying me and helping with the practical arrangements. Asterisk, sometimes life asks us to be bigger than our hurt. If you've ever struggled with family forgiveness, please join our community by subscribing. We're all in this journey together. Asterisk, my parents' house needed major repairs. The roof leaked, the plumbing was broken, and the electrical wiring was dangerous. I hired contractors and had everything fixed. I arranged for a full-time caregiver for my mother and ensured my father had access to the best doctors in the area. The neighborhood watched in amazement as the daughter who had been disowned returned to save her family. People who had whispered about my shameful behavior 25 years ago now spoke about my generosity and devotion. Asterisk, as my parents recovered their health under my care, something beautiful began to happen. They started to merely see, me for the first time in their lives. Asterisk, my mother would hold my hand and tell neighbors, "This is my daughter Khadija. She's a supervisor in a big office in Karachi. She has 2 children who speak English like foreigners. She built her own life with her own hands." Asterisk, my father, once strong and proud, became humble and grateful. "I was wrong about you," he told me one evening as I helped him with his medication. "I thought education would ruin you, but it saved you. It saved all of us." Asterisk, the most profound change came in how my sisters saw me.
I thought so.
The jealousy and resentment that had poisoned our relationships for decades began to fade. They started asking me for advice about their children's education, their health problems, their financial difficulties. Asterisk, you were always the smart one. Fatima told me during one of our conversations. We were just too proud to admit it. Asterisk. I helped Fatima's eldest daughter get admission to a good college. I arranged medical treatment for Zainab's chronic headaches. I even convinced Ruxana to leave her abusive husband and move back home with our parents, where I could ensure her safety and support. Asterisk, my father lived for 3 more years after his surgery. During that time, he experienced something he had missed throughout his life: the love and success of a daughter. He would introduce me to his friends as my daughter, the officer, with pride in his voice that I had dreamed of hearing as a child. Asterisk. When he passed away peacefully in 2013, his last words were to me, "Thank you for coming back. Thank you for forgiving us." Asterisk, my mother lived until 2018. In her final years, she became my greatest supporter and friend. She would tell anyone who would listen about my achievements, my children's success, and how proud she was of the woman I had become. Asterisk, I was blind. She confessed to me shortly before her death. I couldn't see that my greatest treasure was right in front of me. Asterisk, today, as I sit in my comfortable home in Karachi, surrounded by my children and grandchildren, I reflect on this incredible journey. My daughter Sarah is now a doctor, following her dreams without anyone questioning her right to do so. My son Tariq is an engineer who treats his wife as an equal partner. My grandchildren are growing up in a world where their gender doesn't determine their worth. Asterisk. The family that once told me I was nothing now tells everyone that I am their everything. But the real truth is that I was always everything to myself. The moment I chose to value my own dreams, to fight for my own education, to build my own life, I became everything I needed to be. Asterisk, my story isn't unique. Across our country, across the world, there are daughters who are told they are not enough, who are made to feel like burdens, who are denied opportunities because of their gender. But every single one of those daughters has the potential to rewrite her story. Asterisk, the family that rejects you today might need you tomorrow. The dreams they crush might become the very things that save them. The education they deny you might become the tool you use to lift not just yourself, but everyone around you. Asterisk, I don't share this story to boast about my success or to shame my family for their mistakes. I share it because I want every woman listening to know that your worth isn't determined by your family's recognition. Your value isn't measured by their acceptance. You are enough exactly as you are. And your dreams matter. Asterisk, the journey from being nothing to being everything isn't really about changing how others see you. It's about never letting others define who you are. It's about believing in yourself when no one else does. It's about building a life so full of purpose and meaning that even those who rejected you can't help but see your light. Asterisk, to every daughter who feels unwanted, to every woman who has been told she's not enough, to every person who has been made to feel small by their family, your story isn't over. Your worth isn't determined by their words. Your future isn't limited by their vision. Asterisk, you have the power to become everything you dream of being. And when you do, you might just discover that in becoming your own everything, you've become everyone else's everything too. Asterisk, the little girl who was once called worthless grew up to be the woman who saved her entire family, not because they deserved it, but because she chose love over resentment, forgiveness over bitterness, and action over anger. Asterisk, that little girl was me. And if I could do it, so can you. Asterisk, your story matters and your voice deserves to be heard. Please subscribe to our channel to share in more stories of resilience, forgiveness, and triumph. Together, we can inspire change, one story at a time. Asterisk.